Now it's my pleasure to introduce you today's speaker, Jason Grant. Jason Grant was graduated from Lakehead with a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Physics in 2005. He has over 20 years experience working in technology and operations management as a CTO for small business. Jason is the founder of the automated method, a path of least resistance philosophy and process that allows executives to spend more time focusing on their business and less time managing the minutiae of it. Working as a business opposed to in the business, a modern business design. Jason embodies the work and his process. His minimalist pervades everything he does, which is why he's obsessed with business intelligence and the user experience, namely the efficiency of cloud continuity. When asked what keeps him up at night, his response is calmly, the robots are coming. Now, Jason, take it away.
Hi, honored to do this, of course. So I want to just open up by saying that I wrote everything down here and then realized that this isn't me. So I got Post-its all around just because I'm going to go for something here today. So we're going to be doing something interesting. My name is Jason Grant, and I live and work in Toronto, and I'm in the startup community. And quarantine, right? I've learned so much over the past few months that this opportunity to speak is perfect timing. Just because I have all these things that I think people don't understand about the future, and it can help knowing these things like right now. So where am I going to start? So basically the past, present, and the future method is probably the easiest way for me to talk to you right now. So where do I come from? Let's start with the word remote. It's a very popular word these days. And then let's cross over to Zoom, what we're using right now. So if you pay attention to every single application that comes out, like all of them, and you see like a historical pattern of why they're being built. And then why they're being built, in between the why they're being built, there are apps that are built to join these apps together. Those are the integrations, right? So when I was going to Lakehead University, I was working for an internet service provider. And so the best way that I can put this in brief is that I grew up with the internet. Like I bought a computer when I was like 13 and it had a modem in it. And so that relationship with dial-up and then, move over to broadband, you can imagine the stuff that you experience, especially being right in the tech support end of it or the network administration end of it. So that word remote, I started functioning better when I figured out how to use an application called VNC. I won't get too technical here, but I know there are some people that probably understand what I'm talking about. And what it was that first time you could screen share remotely, and that's 1998. So when you get to that point, you realize you don't need to be physically at a location. That's 20 plus years ago. And then what you realize from that is, well, why would I need to be at a local computer at all? Right? Like, why would I need to, I just need a keyboard and a mouse and a screen. And that's pretty forward thinking back then. But I basically started, and this is why I call this addicted to shortcuts, is instead of driving to places, right? Like instead of administrating a server that's a remote location, you could actually use VNC to use the mouse and the keyboard and the monitor remotely. So you can see how that saves time, and it also is a shortcut. Now, if you're me and you experience that, and that's why I wanted to say, and I wrote some things down here, and it's like, the reason why I get so passionate is because I have vivid relationships, memories of applications or softwares in my life that just changed everything. And I wanted to start there because I think that was the first one. That was the first application that actually made me think like, wow, the internet is amazing. Right? Now, where you can go from there, there's a couple other things that I noticed when I was working as an entrepreneur, paperless. Okay. So paperless is something that I've been for as long as I can remember. Okay. And the reason for my interest in it was because I started looking at how web development was working. And so everybody, I know that this is addicted to shortcuts, but it is a long time that we get to talk. So I'm going to go through all these things so that that you can see the evolution. What I noticed was that every website was just basically a database on the back end And then on the front end was some sort of UX or portal or like interface, right? Like a website. Now that is the beginning of cloud, right? But the thing is though, way back when it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So looking for like solutions that were like, now you can find something for anything. You can find a software as a service for anything and an app for anything. But what I'm saying is that I wanted to keep track of, when I was doing like side jobs, I wanted to keep track of my time and also be able to invoice it, as easily as possible. So I found a website that was basically a time tracking software package that you could just email out PDFs or links, XML or something. Like I said, I'll try to be not so technical here. So I was basically paperless in 2000, minus whatever the CRA wanted me to keep in a box. But even then, if I was to go even further ahead, one of the more vivid apps that I could say was like a shortcut for me was the PDF scanner, right? The minute that my phone was able to take a snapshot of a piece of paper and turn it into a PDF, I like adopted it because I'm looking at it from the perspective of time savings, which is what we're getting at here, okay? So everything that I do saves time so that I can almost, and to be honest with you, the clarity that I've had for so long is now become an addiction because I like being present, and I could say that stuff and I could say mindset and like people don't, it doesn't really hit them unless they have something that they can see or feel, right? So that's like where I'm going to go with this conversation now, because there's a metamorphosis that happened. I wrote down, be honest and be yourself right here. Well, I'm doing that. So as a business consultant, what have I learned in the past 6 months? Everybody's gone through a lot during this quarantine. I totally understand. It's crazy. I could say that I have seen a lot of this coming only because when you work in the startup community, all the technologies that are now commonplace, I call it pop culture technologies like Zoom, right? Or Slack or Google Meet, whatever. They've already been in use, but it's almost under the pressure cooker of quarantine that they became so much in pop culture, right? But I mean, it's all about accountability. And I knew that a long time ago because a lot of startups are remote already from the get-go. So that's basically where, as a commerce, I can tell you that I'm like having the time of my life inside my business because I know that business intelligence is what the internet provides. Because I've been, growing with the internet my whole life, right? And so when you think of if it's just a bunch of databases, in the sky, quote unquote, they can talk to each other. And that's where everything can be monitored and checked. And what I'm trying to get to, which is probably one of the goals I had here, because I want to present a solution, a firm solution for anybody that doesn't matter if you're in business, just in life, that can save you time. And it's like, I'm probably already given like 4 or 5 examples, but I do have a quality of life post-it that I put right here because now I'm going to be all over the place. And Sam, if I go I'm not trying to be the ramblings of a madman right now. So if I go off the rails, catch me. But I do like to talk all over the place. This is blue sky thinking in a way, right? So with business intelligence, what I've noticed is that a lot of small business doesn't monitor everything, right? And so if they're not monitoring everything and all the databases are available, how do they know where the ship is sinking, or how do they know where the business is bleeding? And it's because they're not really in an app-centric environment, which is what I would call like these days what businesses are. They're a workflow of operations of just apps that all talk to each other. I mean, it's that's not a mystery, but maybe it is to some. And that's what I've been doing in what I call quarantine R&D. So in the present, my quarantine R&D was just basically interviewing everybody, talking to everybody, having a blast. That's why that's why it's Google Meet and Zoom are so commonplace now, because everybody's been using it so frequently, right? For like video conferencing. Where'd Skype go? Oh yeah, Microsoft bought it. But the interesting thing is when you start talking to people, they're really stressed because they didn't see this coming. And they don't know what pivoting is or agile business is or anything. And I think that's because their lack of understanding of business intelligence. I like to call it the unmonitored. And so like, if you can imagine that I've had conversations where all I have to do is recommend a shortcut, like an app that does something that will give them more time, it's very rewarding. So one of the things that I'm going to bring up here, which is why I'm going to do it, like I call it a real-time metamorphosis, is I'm very interested in phone use, right? It's because like if you imagine that I've been basically adopting every single app along the way, and my business migrated from like an IT company to like a business consulting company, and now I would consider it like modern business design, because like you see all these available solutions and no one knows that they can all talk together. And when they talk together, there's no administration. Unfortunately, yeah, that does have an unemployment issue associated with it, but I can get to that as well because I have a solution for that. But so where I'm going to be extremely honest right now is that what I learned in the past week is that I am now the person that I've been trying to solve problems for, say, in a family business, because I got married on Saturday, right? And my wife is pregnant. So check this out. I can get rid of that idea that a lot of my solutions are hypocritical because of I'm trying to provide solutions for people so that they don't use their phones so often, or they don't feel so stressed or overwhelmed or busy in like life or work. And what's that for, right? So that's why it's hard to kind of get people to, and I like to call it selling free time. But I mean, if I've been selling free time, I should be like absolutely way more wealthy than I am, but it's because it doesn't sell. It's like it only sells when you show it, when you actually someone feels it, when they actually live through something that's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So now that I have family on the brain, I can start to think of what kind of husband and father do I want to be. And like, it's interesting because technology will help me be more available, more clear, more focused, more present, and then I don't have to, and I'm living it. And I always do better when I live the example. And so I wanted to share that because that's why I just threw those notes out, because like now it's like, it's awesome. Because I can tell you that one of the things that I don't really like about, society right now is phone use, right? It's amazing how unnecessary people, how much it's being used, but unnecessarily. And I think a lot of that has to do with because they're not realizing, especially if you're a business owner. I'm going to try to keep this as general as possible, but especially if you're a business owner, it's difficult because like you don't know these alternatives to like try to make things easier so that you have time. And so when I say addicted to shortcuts, I really mean it, right? Like, it's just finding out how everything can work together, and then none of the administration that you would think that you would have to do. Because if software can do it, you don't. And there'll be an argument in there because, of course, traditional business, let's say, for example, you have to use your physical body. Okay, and if you have to use your physical body, obviously robotics hasn't fully replaced the human frame. So, that's like where you would be that part of business is obviously necessary. But administration associated with it, any information manipulation associated with it, that can all be software. And I've been, and like, and then I was mentioning, so I want to inject examples in here. So like when I was talking about Zoom and I brought it up, which is what we're using right now, obviously, I wanted to say that I have all these apps in line that when it just basically creates a meeting in my calendar, and then it automatically uses Zoom, and Zoom is more effective than email because email is ridiculous. Email became tennis. If you're not aware what that is, I can go and say very quickly that that's like replying and replying and replying over and over every day and not getting anything done. So because I influence decisions, I wanted to use this platform to like say a few things that I think are really important. One, I want to firmly state that there are solutions out there, but people need to figure out how to get there. And of course, I'm a bad example. I'm a good example, but a bad example because I've been doing it so long, like 20 plus years of just like downloading apps, testing them out, seeing which ones work best with each other, following pop culture trends and like changing certain things along the way, completely organic. My life has been technologically organic because I get it, right? I look at something and if I see it teasing something that I don't have to do ever again, I'm like all over it. because I see the potential, right? And so I bring that into my life, into my business, into whatever, and I make it and I plug it in. And then of course, like the output is like free time, but I remember I said that's not what the focus is for people, but I'm going to say clarity and being present. So like the notifications on my phone, and let's go down that road for a little bit because I'm sure people are really curious. So someone said to me once, how do I describe myself? And I said, well, I'm a walking toolbox. Like of all the tricks, tweaks, every app shortcut that I could have that, by the way, keeps me away from my phone. Right? And so my phone screen is black. I have a wallpaper, it's my wife. But when you open up the screen, it's black. I have the first panel on my iPhone is just black. And the reason why is I don't want anything showing me something that I don't want to see. And also I don't want to be told what to do by my phone. The little red dots. Oh, I mean, it's crazy. I see people, oh, Alyssa does it too. She just basically gets rid of the little dots because they're offensive, right? It makes you feel like you have something to do. And one of those games is getting rid of the red dots. So let's say my phone, for example, like black screen and all the notifications are turned off. I've inverted the relationship with my phone. The only reason why I need to use the phone is when it's needed, necessary. And usually that is connected to my calendar because I live by my calendar, not by my phone. So anything that ends up in my calendar is scheduled, which manages everybody's expectations, right? I don't have to feel like you don't have to return a call. You know, the calls are all scheduled. And I mean, there's also people that would say that, well, there are certain channels in business that have urgency. Yeah, but then you direct those certain things to those certain channels, right? You got to look at it from the perspective of what are you doing and how valuable is your time to you? And distractions are like, it's ridiculous. And it's almost like people are addicted to distractions because it makes them feel, you know, like they're getting something done. And I can say that that's probably why a lot of people don't move forward or a lot of people are stressed out. So let's say, for example, all the notifications are turned off on my phone. So what you do is you just experiment with what notifications are of necessary urgency in your life. And like, so for me, I like to experiment. My phone is completely offline except for what I allow through. So I've reversed it. Is that a shortcut? I would say that that's part of all of this workflow, right? Because I'm trying to build a life that I can continue that will be like, you know, a legacy, and like I can scale it if I want to, and like my business, I can scale it if I want to, but I can also focus on my family. And I think that that's what a lot of people out there want, you know, and I don't think they know how to get there. But I'm a living example. And I mean, there's a lot of crazy mistakes along the way because you experiment with different things that you know, make it even harder to operate. But the idea is that you got to keep figuring these things out. They're there for a reason, you know? Every software package that's out there that has made the $1 billion level is obviously out there for a reason. And I'm going to get into like the future of that. So yeah. It's just by like every software package, it's crazy. I know what my toolbox is now, and I'm sure everybody has a toolbox. Maybe they don't, maybe they do in life, maybe they don't. But it is really interesting how you can still function once you optimize it. And it's all about optimizing it for free time. That's all it is. And also doing things that you want to do and giving up everything you don't want to do to software, which I need to keep that in my mind because that right there is that's a future thing that I want to talk about, because what I learned in quarantine R&D, oh my God. Okay, so I did have some notes here and I can scatterbrained a little bit as I am, but let's just go to, let's go back to the car. So I really early on during this quarantine noticed that obviously the word remote, I've always known remote work, like it made sense so long ago. It's just that I think that corporate structure that's led by someone who isn't, you know, forward thinking, you know, they basically preferred that people came to the office because they could see what they're paying for. They could see the biological people that they're paying for, right? In a room. And it also, there's camaraderie. Yes, I understand that. But what happened in quarantine was, and I'm going to get really honest with you. my wife and I have an open concept condo, and it's very difficult for people to be in the same space on their computers. She's got a MacBook, I've got a MacBook, she's got AirPods, I've got AirPods. And like, I call it schizophrenic crosstalk, because I can't hear what she hears. She can't hear what I hear, but I hear what she says. But you know, like, it's just two people in a room. So what I did was I packed up and I went into the car. And that's what I would call the pressure cooker inside the pressure cooker, because once I was inside the car, it was like I had nothing else to do except for think. And so I really came up with these ideas, and that's where I interviewed small business owners, and I did all these case studies, and I wanted to figure out where their weaknesses were in their business operations. And that's why I'm so focused on business intelligence, because it makes sense, because you could find revenue in time, and you can find, unfortunately, that's why it's a double-edged sword, is because the HR problem, right? It's like you minimize the workforce, but that's the biggest expense of a business is salary. So there is that problem there. But there is a solution to that. And I did a panel the other day, and I brought up that it's not my idea, but it is an idea. And it's that outcomes, not ours concept. I won't go down that rabbit hole right now, but it is basically how this addicted to shortcuts, made it like, that's the full spectrum. Because like, if there's something that automatically happens, cloud to cloud, API, whatever, scheduled, you don't need to do it, it does it for you. Well, all that along the way is just like, they're just outcomes. They're instantaneous, right? You don't need to double click, open, copy, paste. Oh, don't even get me started about Microsoft Excel. Because that's one of my attack zones. Like, if I see that, I'm like, how many people here are copying and pasting and exporting reports or whatever, manipulating data? Because you don't have to do that anymore, right? All the applications do that for you, and they just parse information between each other. So why would you need to, open an application to do those administrative tasks? I digress. Okay, so I did a history of me. Where are we going to go here now? So let's go back to the popularity of integrations, right? That I would say is probably the most interesting thing that maybe is under the hood of the internet that people aren't aware of. These applications are like, so I imagine the app world, like when social media platforms come out, people, download it like immediately. Look at TikTok, right? There is a whole inventory of apps on most people's phone, depending on their age, right, that are all, social media related. Okay. And so that could be like, I could go through the whole gamut. What is it? Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube. What am I missing? Facebook. Good thing I said that last. But on the other hand, if you look at that popularity of social media platforms, the app platforms, that's like the more interesting side to me as a business consultant, right? Because they're doing the same thing, but for business or for like work or for some sort of, because I mean, you can use a project management app for your life, or you can use like a time tracking app for your life. But most of the time, all these things are for, business, some sort of commerce. And what you notice is, and this is, I don't know if I want to go here right now, but I'm going to have to, because it's in my mind. They're collecting data too, right? Like, even like something as simple as, it's not as simple, but I prefer HubSpot over Salesforce. I don't know if I'm sorry if, I know this is an academic channel. I don't know. It's easier for me to identify brands if I mention them. But, like, say, for example, like Salesforce, what they have is they have so much data. They have so much data. And it's not the same as social media. What it is they're figuring out shortcuts for you in the software. And then rolling out these features that you'll pay for that save time and optimize process, or algorithms that show you something so that you can be agile or pivot or, organically run your business. However you want to look at it, be prepared, right? This preparation thing, I can't stress enough that I think that if the startup communities, business intelligence formulas were more popular in traditional business, a lot of businesses would have a better survival rate during this crazy time, right? Like they would have figured out early on that they can scale back and still function with a revenue, still drive the revenue line without going bankrupt or closing or whatever, right? So that's where this conversation really goes for me now. Because when I look at the whole app stack that I use, and if you want to know what that is, I can define it. So in programming languages, people refer to they call it their tech stack, which is like all the things that they use to build whatever it is. App stack isn't as common as a hashtag or word, but I use it quite often. And that's basically if you were to say you were to use Google Chrome or you were to use anything that was like any browser, all the tabs that are open that all talk to each other would be your app stack. Now, when you go down the rabbit hole for each one of those, and so by talking to business owners, family, like it's funny, but I really do have a soft spot for family-run businesses because I understand, I come from one, and I also understand like how technology can be foreign but helpful. And you know, and it's only because like probably, and the word tradition is interesting, but the traditional method of how the business got there needs to change now for them to survive or to have a better quality of life or quality of business operations. So as I interviewed a business owner, right? And then what I would do is I'd find out, just mentioning certain shortcuts that they could use to like alleviate some of the strenuous activities that occupy the majority of their quote unquote busy day. And then go back and do like a feedback, do like a post-mortem and have them tell me what they think. That's probably the coolest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I can thank quarantine for that. I mean, you probably shouldn't thank quarantine for anything, but because I wouldn't have gotten that deep. I wouldn't have gone deep down like that and cared so much if I didn't have, you know, if I was sitting in a car. But the interesting part is that I now became because I'm like, right, I'm like super interested in how do you make everything so much more optimized? What is the R&D? Like what else is there? What can I do for, you know, R&D for me, for my life? Because like now being, like I said, husband and father to be soon, you need, like, I still want to be in business, but I still want to have time. And it's crazy, right? It's like a Venn diagram. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's fascinating to me. It just took all these things happening at once. But I started traveling down the rabbit hole of the apps themselves. So getting so talking with, and this is my future conversation. How am I doing for time here? Oh, I'm halfway through. Good. So let's go to the future now, because this is like what I find interesting probably the most. So you could describe what I have created for me as like a cloud bubble, right? Like this bubble of software that runs the administration of me and of my business, vice versa, or sometimes one and the same. And so that cloud bubble is like a firewall between the things I don't want to do and the things that I do want to do. And it protects me, and and I wouldn't trade it in for the world. But what I've realized from that, you know, because like literally, I said this before, and it comes up, you know, it's like, because I grew up with the internet and I've seen how everything is now, and I know where it's going. I've been building a administrative clone of myself with the internet for like 20 years. And if you imagine that that's possible, even like a fraction of that is scary for someone to like, you know, you could save 5 hours a week from like one recommended solution doing, I don't know what it is that you don't like doing, but you don't have to do it ever again. And so here, when you travel down the rabbit holes of the app world, that's where this gets good. They have scopes. Okay, so all the apps that are out there that talk to each other and are integrated with each other, they all have a scope. They roll out features that you'll pay for if you know what it's for and why it's there. And they've discovered these solutions by just plain operation and by their users. And because I've been so forward during quarantine to talk to these people, I've been in Google Meets or Zooms with the engineers of some of these. It's because people, I guess they don't do this. And of course, if you're in a car, if you're in this penitentiary for your mind in a car, you know, like you don't mind doing a Google Meet with an engineer for HubSpot, you know, like I guess you don't, but I loved it. What I started noticing was, and this is where it gets real good, that my ideas were traveled without being a developer, were traveling into their scope. How many times have I been cut off where someone says, don't build it, don't do it, don't customize it, don't build it. We're doing it. It's coming out in Q4, or it's coming out next year in Q1. And I go, whoa. So they've been working on an algorithm that I think is like fantastic. And by fantastic, I mean like fantastical. Like when it happens, I'm like, $10 extra a month. Okay, sure. Because I can see what it does and how it makes everything better for me. But I'm also saying that that's what the data that they're collecting. They're collecting on how do they make you lazier, right? Like what will you pay for so that you don't have to do something? And it's like unbelievable what's coming up. And I think that quarantine is obviously, I say pressure cooked. It's pressure cooked a lot of these things. The timelines have changed. Some of these scopes used to be, you know, quarters away. Now they're pushing them out this quarter. And the reason why is because it's in demand, because remote is on everybody, is in front of everybody. So let's release these things that may have not been like, well, back from the past version of the future may not have been like adopted quickly, or they may have been too foreign. But like people like myself see them and I'm like, oh, that's coming, that's amazing. And it also integrates better with the other things. And it's like, so the shortcuts there's more of them and they get tighter. So what if I could just go even further into the future, okay? And I mentioned that, like, you know, that cloud version, the cloud around me that protects me from the things I don't want to do. It's like I call it the JSON bot. And so JSON bot, which is an administrative version of me, of course, is going to click yes to all these integrations, and I'm going to add them into my life. But when people say, you know, I'm going to bring up AI right now because I have to make a statement. I like to say pre-AI. And the reason for that is because I'm not concentrating on sentience. What I'm concentrating on is like duplicating tasks that human beings do that software can do for you, right? Like and it's predictable to an extent. And unfortunately, because there's so many data points, it's pretty easy to start to build when you're providing all this data for these companies like Amazon, Uber, Google, you name it. They're just collecting data, but so are these apps for business, right? They're collecting it too. And so what I've noticed and what I can tell you is that I think that AI, pre-AI, will be funded by convenience and our laziness. And you can quote me on that, because the way that I look at this coming down the pipe is I'm like, that's why there's going to be such an unemployment problem. I knew that a long time ago. And, you know, I want to help solve that. It's difficult because obviously I spoke before. It's like, I understand why people would want to cut down salarized positions. It's a lot of money. But also if you look at it even further, you're like, they're going to start to release like extremely, you know, operation, like extremely AI-based operations for business that you'll pay for. And it only bleeds together because they're all integrated. So it's like it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And I don't think it's going to be because we want to create sentience. I think that there's just enough data to sell us something that we'll pay for, you know, that'll just make our life easier. And then it'll just get so close to us that we'll be like, oh, there's AI. And it's an assistant bot. Oh, that's funny. I didn't see that coming. Yes, I should have seen that coming. So yeah, I don't know what else I can go on here except for like I wrote down a few quotes. Yeah, and I do think that the reason why I didn't want to use any notes is because I wanted to make sure that you know, this whole parenting and like, you know, family orientated decision making. It's important because I do think people use their phones too much. And I do think that people are actually spending too much time in front of, their computers, etc., when they don't have to. So you can actually free people's minds with like this, but it's like I said, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I could see the future coming and I want it to be positive, but in terms of how I want to raise my, be a husband and be a father, it makes sense to me to have my phone out as little as possible, but I still have to run a business. So that's the challenge accepted. And I totally agree that it's possible. If anything that I've said helps at all, it's makes me feel good, because it makes me feel like I'm giving back. It's all like so it's so there. And one of the things that I know, or that I can tell you, is that the solution that I seem to find is the most popular, the most effective solution to a lot of common problems is like, pick something that offends you the most in your life. Like pick something that you see and it's like so much of it happens and it can be replicated. It's like a template problem and it's an offender. And then you download an app that like solves that problem. And usually I try to, if you're controlling your life with your email, that's a problem already. You should try to switch over to living by your calendar. That'll change your life for sure. The other thing is though, when you get this app and you install it, whatever it might be, learn it like inside and out, okay? Because like that's what it gets me addicted to these shortcuts is going past the entry beginner level of the application, the software as a service. The beginner level solves the problem of you thinking it's supposed to solve the problem. Right? And then the intermediate and advanced layers, that's when it gets good, because now you can like figure out how to adopt that into notifications so that you aren't being controlled by your phone and you are the owner of your phone. The phone is not the owner of you. And that's like, and usually I say dedicate a weekend to that, right? Because when you dedicate a weekend, that's a lot of time, but at the same time, it's homework, right? And a lot of people don't like to learn. I think that's probably one of the biggest shortfallings of the human race right now is just everybody just stop wanting to learn. It's like, no, what is something that I wrote down? I said like, very few people want to invest time to learn how to save time. They feel it's a waste of time to learn how to save time. That's nuts. How are we doing for time here? Did you want to, Sam, unless there's anything else that I could talk about, I'm going off the rails.
I think we could do questions now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So just a reminder to everyone, you can type in your message to me privately and I'll read it out so Jason can answer it. So the first question that we have is, what advice will you give new grad or soon to be graduating student in this current climate on how to focus on their goals and achieve success?
Whoa, wow, that's a mouthful, eh? Say that again. Do you mind?
Of course, yeah.
Sorry.
What advice? Yeah, I just want to make sure I unmuted myself.
I don't have the chat. I wanted to remove everything.
Oh no, of course. What advice would you give new grads or soon to be graduating students in this current climate, how to focus on their goals and achieve success?
Okay. I think when I spoke last time, I did this. Like, you don't know, your whole day is you, right? Like you wake up and you go to sleep, and then you have so many hours in the day. And I always say that I like a journal, right? Because what it'll do is you'll see where you fall on your face, right? You'll see what you don't like if you keep writing it down. And so if you're like in university, say for example, your day is pretty stressful already, but there's like something to be said for keeping track of yourself. And also like writing down things that you feel are in the way, right? Or that you don't agree with. And I do this all the time, and it's amazing because then I like the analog of a pen and a piece of paper, but when you flip the pages, you get to see like all this, and you can always predict the future of where you want to be. And so like your focus gets so much better because you just feel like you're letting yourself down in a way when you see all these things that you keep writing over and over and over again. And, a grad is like, it's difficult, but there's like, I RSS feed everything, I keep track of things that Because you know what it is? I can tell you, it's because it's changing so fast that, like, especially if you are taking any sort of programming, right? Like I see it because like your course load and whatever you're studying or your thesis, you know, that might be old by the time you get by the time you graduate, right? And it's like, it's so hard to keep moving and it's to be organic. That's why I think watching yourself every day is really important. I don't know if that really answers the question, but that focuses me so that I know what I'm going to go for next by looking at every single thing that I like, my agrees and disagrees, basically. Does that answer the question somewhat?
I think so. I think that's great advice. So our next question is, can you explain a little bit more about how you eliminate Excel from the workflow?
Well, this is okay. So I'm going to have to, Excel's a Microsoft product, right? We'll say spreadsheet. Like, unfortunately, they really got their footing in there for Office and stuff because that the world for a very long time ran on Microsoft Office. So it's really hard to phase anything else into the sphere, right? If it's a spreadsheet, it's like rows and columns. And if it's a database, that's a totally different thing. And I've always noticed where people are trying to imitate a database with a spreadsheet. And if you look at it that way, the database can be automatically generated, you know, in the cloud, the content of that by the algorithms inside whatever application that, you know, uses that function of export. Because like the export of a spreadsheet, whether it be PDF or raw Excel or CSV or tabular limited, whatever, what happens is that's the final product of whatever's in the database anyway. And database query language, because it's just the same as it's rows and columns as well, it's like way more effective to like have something automatically grabbed from rows and columns in a database to display what's in the spreadsheet. Now, the problem, I think, is what people are using the spreadsheets for, right? And that's where I always look at whatever you're using the spreadsheet for, go find out if there's a software as a service that does it the same way, but through like a web interface, right? And then you're skipping over that because it's all happening on the inside. And then you don't, you know, but there are some exceptions to that. Yes, of course there are, but I like to focus on the least amount of spreadsheet manipulation manually. And for the most part, usually you could find it. It's just that some people, you know, don't know that these softwares exist that actually, you know, are doing that. They're replacing spreadsheets. I mean, I can give you one right now. I'll name drop again. I really love what Airtable did. Airtable is probably if you just go airtable.com, I think it's .com. That would be a good example of what I'm talking about.
Wonderful. Are you concerned with your data security through the use of application shortcuts?
Just like apps in general? No. Yes and no. This is if you can't beat them, join them concept. It's so amazing to me that I am a total person that, you know, describes digital security, but at the same time has an iPhone. You know, one of the things that I can say that I have, depending on where I am, is I do use Cloudflare and stuff like that. So I do have a VPN protecting my phone and my computer for certain things and where I am, et cetera. That's like a good way of, but at the same time, do I use it all the time? No. Because my quality of life changes if I don't use these things as actively and avidly as I do, because I want them to help me do things I don't want to do and save time. It's the same as social media, right? Like, you can't just denounce Instagram. You can, but I mean, I have, and it wasn't fun. People think there's a problem with you. You know, like you just start unfollowing everybody on Instagram, and then someone thinks that there's something wrong with you. I'm like, what if I didn't want to be on social media at all? Oh, that's impossible. That's impossible. You got to go see a psychiatrist. But yeah, no, I'm concerned about it, but at the same time, I leverage my productivity against it, you know?
Okay, our next question is, what did you mean by live by your calendar?
Okay, so I have multiple calendars, and what I decided a long time ago is that I don't like not knowing when to do something. And there's a lot of books on this. It's like theming days. picking hours of power, figuring out where you're the most productive doing something and only doing that thing in that period of time in that window. But with living by my calendar, I don't need to put those things in anymore, but I do need to put in anything that I'm doing with somebody else in my calendar. And without asking them through email, because that's just ridiculous. Like go and put in a 2 field, 7 people and just go and add a calendar invite that you want them to accept. 6 of them, 6 strangers. You're just like, hey, I want 9 a.m. on Monday. What do you guys want? I guess it's 9 a.m. on Monday, right? Is that because I said it? I asked for it, so it's 9 a.m. on Monday. You can see where this goes. It's crazy. But I when I put things in my calendar, they're the only thing that break my lock screen on my iPhone. So my Google Calendar is like one of the things that I have for notifications because anything that's in there, I have to do. And so whenever, and I also have a calendar for like my sales channel where people can jump in and it's using Calendly. I'm really name dropping here, but, and then they can go and people can select the time that I'm available that I made available in my calendar. So that's why what I mean by living by it is that it breaks my lock screen and then I do it. And if it's a conversation or a Zoom or a Meet, it just happens immediately because I've accepted that that's when I'm available. You see? So like if you do that, then it's not really control because you've given up some of it, but at the same time, it manages all these expectations, including with yourself. And I don't mind that. So I feel like that's a powerful thing is to really put your calendar forward.
I think you might be answering, you might have answered this question, but what is your favorite app for saving time?
What is my favorite app for saving time? Ooh, that's a good one right now. It's a feature. I would say the feature do not disturb on the iPhone, but yeah, no, that's a good question. You know, and I remember I did say that I have vivid memories of when something I had put into my, you know, the evolution of my Jason bot. And I would say Zapier, period, done. You're welcome, Zapier. It's all there. And do you mind if I just go down just for a real quick second? Okay, so their whole staff is remote. They're all web developers. They're all engineers. They're all software engineers. And they are the app world connector. So it's a culture of developers that are all remote that build the glue and the integrations between apps that may not have a stock or default integration built in. It's like if statements, right? If this, then that, do this when this happens. It's like it makes all the cogs activate. And I can't believe it took me so long to think of that. It changed my life because you can imagine that if you just basically work out workflows and then just drag and drop like almost like that. But what happens when something happens, they are way underestimated for sure. Time savings. That's like the machine. That's putting the machine together for me.
Very nice. I promise he is not a sponsor for it. No,
no, I know. It's an academic Sam. It's an academic channel. It's hard, but you know what I thought about that. But the difficult thing is how do you reference these things that already exist without saying the name of the company? You know, like. No,
I totally agree.
It's hard. Like you say Pinterest, and someone might be like, "Oh, I didn't know that existed," and then they download it. You know.
So true. The next question is, how has networking helped you? How much time do you dedicate to it, and how have you optimized it?
Networking,
like with people, like networking with individuals and growing your business.
Oh, well, I mean, how has it helped?
Yes. Right? So how has it helped you? How much time do you dedicate to it, and how have you optimized it?
Oh, I've dedicated all my time to it because I love. I just love talking to people. And so I found my calling through through deleting everything that I don't want to do, which is hilarious, but I don't mind talking on the phone. I don't mind going to events when that happens again. I don't mind video conferencing like Zoom, Google Meet. All this stuff is just, I love it. I love communicating with people. I love being a social person. I'm very social. And I can say that it's changed everything because I'm not an email type person, right? For some reason, writing an email it's not me anymore. So having like 15 conversations a day, 15 minutes or a half an hour or whatever, like of course that's like how everything was built, right? That's like when anybody says that like the best relationships are, like, of course they are, because it's like interpersonal, right? And I can't stress enough that is the absolute most important thing to me. And like LinkedIn, oh God, I won't even get started, but like that's what that is. It's what it's built for, you know?
Okay, and our last question, we're going to tie it back to Lakehead. So
Please
we're
do.
curious, how has Lakehead prepared you for life after university and kind of this career path that you're on right now?
Wow. Oh, well, that's a great question. Like, obviously I wanted to be academic right out of high school. And, you know, I love learning, and going straight from high school into like university, going to Lakehead University, just continued me to like figure out how to learn. Like your learning style changes from high school to university, obviously, or you apply all the things that you learned in high school in university and they just get better. Or like for me, I optimized my learning, right? Like I started seeing like how I wanted to interact with the university because it allowed me freedom. Like you become like an academic entrepreneur when you're in university, and and I love the protocol, right? Like university teaches you how to learn, teaches you a lot of things, but it also instills like this protocol where you figure out your own personal protocol because you don't want to let yourself down, but at the same time you want to optimize your experience. And you know, and it is stressful. And I mean, I was working and going to university, but like you can make it work. Maybe my grades didn't reflect on like what the university experience, but I did it. And I would never have traded it in, because like when you get out, it's like, I call it the academic handshake. It's like everybody knows what you went through. And I love that. It's almost like the military, right? And it's like, as much as I don't agree with that, but at the same time, academic military, I've mentioned that before, because it really is. You develop your own learning protocol, and it travels with you through life, because, you know, I meet people and may or may not have gone to university, and it's like their skill sets with how they want to learn is different, for sure. It is different, because I know what it's like to take a stack of paper, and I always say this, take a stack of paper like this to the library, which is one assignment, and like get this stapler that doesn't exist anywhere else in the universe. And you have to like try to press, you know, all those pieces together. And it's like 8 o'clock and it's due at like 8:30 in the morning, and you didn't go to sleep, and you know, basically worked in the Agora like all night. And you basically get that staple through, and you don't even know where those staples come from. And then you have to walk all the way to like in my time, it was like a wood box. And then you look at the slit that they made in the wood box, and it doesn't fit. And you're like, and then you have to like somehow, anyway, when you go through that, you're set for life.
I think we can all relate to that experience. Well, you know,
Yeah.
Jason, just on behalf of Lakehead University and our Alumni Association, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Is there any final words you want to say before I end this meeting?
No, I honestly, I just think that writing things down is a really important, like figuring things out, you know, writing it down and figuring out where, like, I always say this, what do you not like to do? Because I mean, software will probably do it for you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I'm sure if I turned on all the videos and unmuted everyone, there'd be a round of applause, but imagine hearing it right now. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And we can see some emoji hands already going through. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week. And please be sure to check out the rest of our events that we have on our homecoming webpage. Thank you so much,
Yeah, thanks
Jason.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you.